right, my friends, welcome back. This is going to be part 82 of my presentation on the flood and Noah's Ark. And as you can see, I am not at my usual place of abode when I am doing these videos. I am in a motorhome. Sandra and I, we like to RV travel, usually in the winter months, the colder months. And so on this trip here, it's mainly for maintenance, just to kind of exercise the motorhome. And so we're just here for 2 days. And actually, I'm planning on leaving this evening because it's going to be raining tomorrow morning. And I do not like to pack up in the rain. It's just a mess. And so I'll just eat the extra money I paid for this trip. And so it's no big deal because usually we have to be out of here. On this one here, this place here, we have to be out of here by 11 o'clock in the morning. And so we won't be leaving until 5 or 6 this evening. So we'll get some of our money that we spent for the second day. But this is what it looks like. I'll show you what it looks like around this site here for you guys that are RVers. We are at Crosswinds Family Campground. Crosswinds Family Campground for you guys that like to RV travel. This is going to be in Linwood, NC, North Carolina. This is a Christian campground, or the owners are Christians. And so we're at site C1, which is an outstanding site, but they have a lot of really nice sites out here. And as we saw yesterday, they're actually adding on to the campground. And we didn't know that when we were walking the dogs, let them use the restroom. We saw that. And so, this place here, it's real close to the house. It's got full hookup, which is electric, water, and sewer. And so it's just an ideal place to exercise the motorhome. We probably will just go one night in the future. And but I like to run everything, put some water through the pipes, turn on the refrigerator, let it run a few days, air conditioner, and just kind of work some of the stuff here. And so, but we have an RV channel. Mainly it's called Journey Thru-N-C. And so if you guys want to check that out, I'll have a link in the description below for my YouTubers and my Rumble people. For my Facebook people, you look in the description above, and I'll have links to the site that I'm at. I do a review on it, and then I'll have a link to our RV channel. And so just something we're doing. It's going to be short-lived. Once what we're trying to do is we're trying to stay at least one night in all 100 counties in North Carolina. There are exactly 100 counties in North Carolina. So what my wife and I decided to do is challenge ourselves to stay at least one night in all 100 counties. And so far we have 70. We've stayed in all 70 counties out of the 100. And not all counties have campgrounds, but there's other sites that we could go on to where people have private land that we could stay on. And sometimes there's counties without that. And so we have boondocked at Walmart, in a Walmart parking lot before, for those Walmarts that do allow it. And so, but it's just a really neat challenge. But once this is over with, we don't really intend on posting any more RV stuff unless it's a new campground or something like that. But that's going to be far and few between. I think for the most part, we're probably going to just stick with the places that we went, we know, we like, and then we'll just make road trips out of that. But we just stay just in North Carolina. And so, but this is another part of me, and that I like to do. And but as you can see, I did bring some stuff to kind of add to the video. This is a Noah's Ark model that I had made by Den's Model Ships, and he's out of I think he's out of Pennsylvania. I want to say he's out of Pennsylvania. And so but he does pirate ships, and he is really, really good. If I can find a link to his webpage, I will put that in the description. But he made this for me, and he made several, really all my Noah's Ark models that I have. He made them. And so I have one that where he calls it the presentation model. And what he does is he made it so I can take part of it, the insides apart, and I take them to classes, or I used to take them to classes when I would do presentations on Noah's Ark. for kids, and I took it to public school. The public school kids really like to see that. But I got my mammoth here. I got my mammoth here, and so I try to bring something to kind of add to the ambiance of the video. But we are going to continue on with the topic of the population bottleneck, and kind of some of the aspects about what they think happened to the mammoths that were on Wrangel Island. This is that, if you'll notice that bottleneck. What we did is we kind of rabbit trailed off the topic, and because when they got to talking about the bottleneck, I was like, oh, wow, I remember this in another area where I'm kind of rabbit trailed from what they were talking about at Wrangel Island to a video that I saw from the Travel Channel back in 2000, over 25 years ago. And so it was February 3rd of 2000 when that thing aired, when I recorded it. And so basically 25 years ago, I saw this video, and it had a very strong significance to it, and that I immediately saw the flood when they were talking about this. So if you want to check out that video, check out video number 81, and you'll see that. But at any rate, what they were stating in this video is that they looked at the mitochondria from people all over the world, just taking samples here and there from different areas, and they saw a pattern where it looked like at some point in our past that we almost went extinct. That most of the population, just about all the population on the planet, was eradicated, and only just, they said, maybe a few thousand people were alive on the earth at one time. Well, the Bible says that event was the worldwide flood, the historical biblical worldwide flood, and that only 8 people survived that, and then we are descendants from those people. And this is a quote from that video. He says, our population may have been in such a precarious position that only a few thousand of us may have been alive on the whole face of the earth at one point in time, that we almost went extinct, that some event was so catastrophic. What event do you think that is, class? I think that was the flood, as to nearly cause our species to cease to exist completely. And so how much more in your face do you got to be? When looking at the world from a biblical worldview, I can clearly see that this right here was the flood. Now, I've decided to do, and we'll talk about this again here in the future, is you think about all the people coming from just 8 people off of Noah's Ark, and here we are today, and the thoughts about it. And so what I thought I would do is even take it back to the Garden of Eden, where we came from. Everybody on this planet only came from 2 individuals, Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, that's it. We are all descendants from Adam and Eve. And so now in Genesis 1:28, it says, be fruitful and multiply. And so now you think about gene mutations and stuff like that. Wouldn't there be issues and problems if brothers and sisters were procreating with each other from the beginning? And wouldn't there be a mutational rate? Well, you got to think, at the very beginning, when God created us, he created us perfect. Not only a moral perfection, but physical perfection. There was no mutations. There was nothing in our genes that was bad. And so Genesis 1:31, it says, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good, and the evening and the morning were the 6th day. And so now if we had mutations already building up on our genes and our DNA, it would not be very good. And matter of fact, the whole mutations and the breakdown in the body and the DNA and the whole gene structure, that started right after sin. When Adam and Eve sinned, that's when that started, the whole breakdown. And so, God said that ye shall surely die. Well, it wasn't just spiritually, but was also physically. And it was a slow a slow death. It didn't mean that he would kill them right there on the spot, but we wouldn't live forever as they would have before they sinned. And so, but Adam and Eve had genetic perfection, and then the limited gene pool. Now you're talking about limited gene pool. I mean, we're talking just two people, but all of us came from that initial just two people. So that shows you just how perfection it is. We're nothing more than a copy from a copy from a copy and a copy. Now in the Bible, it does speak of close marriages and within close relatives, I guess you could say. And now Abraham, when he was in Gerar with King Abimelech, he was afraid that the people there would kill Abraham so they could get to Sarah. So what he did is he told Sarah to say, "Hey, tell them you're my sister. Tell them you're my sister, and that way, nothing will happen to me." And so now he got found out. He got found out, just to keep it short and sweet. He got found out that what he said was a lie, and they caught him on the carpet because of it. And this is what he said there. If you notice that highlighted area, he says, "And yet, indeed, she is my sister. She is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife." And so I guess you would call that a half sister. And so, but yes, he actually married his half sister. And so now Genesis 1 through 19, it goes in, in Genesis 11, 1 through 19, it talks about the Tower of Babel and how the people were dispersed. And now I'm not going to read all through that, but what happened was God came down and confused the languages of the people there. And now what you have there is that is where all the nations came from. The nations, as far as the different language groups and stuff like that, that started right here. That started right here. And so what you have here is, if you'll notice, this right here is from Adam's chronological chart or map of history. And what I did is I just took a scan of it. And now the genetic isolation started right here at Babylon. You would have different groups dispersing out because most likely you're only going to hang around the people that you can understand. And so when God confused the languages, all the language groups would come together, and then they would disperse. God told them to disperse along, and throughout the whole earth, and they decided not to, and that's when Babel came about. And so God came down, judged them by confusing the languages of everybody. And so then they dispersed and they did what God told them to do. And so I believe it was forced. It wasn't by choice. It was a forced thing. And so when you start to do that, and now the gene pool is much smaller, and you're going to get traits, dominant traits that are going to start coming out in individuals. And that's where we get the different skin colors and hair and stuff like that. So it's not only the languages that are different, then you start getting into the different skin colors and stuff, because dominant traits start to manifest themselves in those groups there. And so now, when it comes to the flood and now, as far as population and the population as a whole, the population doubling in about 150-year increments. This right here is just an estimated thing, an example. Growth using a 150-year model in the 4,500 years from the flood. You have the flood happening, and then you have all the way till now, and they have us at 8,589,934,592. Well, it's actually in 2000 AD. They had us at, I think it was 6 billion at the time. But the thing is, guys, it said, this is the whole thing when evolutionist says that we've been here for millions and millions of years, evolving. If humans have been on the planet for just 50,000 years, the population would have doubled 332 times to a population to 1 followed by 100 zeros. And so I don't even know how to pronounce that. So that right there, that number down there that you see, the 10 followed by 100 zeros, that's how many people would be on our planet. There would be no way we could even have that many people on our, you talk about crowded now. We would be stacked on top of each other. Now, by the time, now when we're talking about mutations and stuff like that, God did eventually make a law forbidding close relative marriages. And so by the time Moses, about 2,500 years later, the genetic mutations would be harmful. And in the book of Leviticus, chapters 18 through 20, God forbids close relative marriages. And so a little over 2,500 years, Adam's sin to the law of Moses, like I said, is a little over 2,500 years. The mutation buildup from Adam's sin, all the way up until that law, there would be a mutation buildup in our genetic code that could cause the problem. And so during the flood, the population bottleneck would not be a problem because it was only one generation. Inbreeding is kept to a minimum. Not much diversity is lost, and bad mutations can't get a foothold. And so, anyway, moving on, the risk of new mutations increases with the age of the parent, especially in the case of the male. Sperm kept on being produced from cell division throughout a man's lifetime, some 840 divisions by age 50, and the risk of mutation increases with each round of division. Therefore, fathering children at an older age means a greater risk of passing on mutations than for that same person having children at a younger age. Now, the genetic information Noah's gametes would have had 500 years in the red area, that's the red area there, to be negatively impacted by mutations. And guys, even though Adam and Eve sinned, still they're living in almost a perfected world. The world still had things about it that we don't have now, and people were still living much longer even after the sin. I mean, they were living hundreds of years, and so the mutation rate wasn't there. And then after the flood, then you can see the lifespan start to fall off. I mean, look at Noah. Noah lived 950 years, and he lived in the pre-flood world and the post-flood world. Shem being the same. Now, Arphaxad, he didn't, and you can see the drop-off. And then Salah, and then Eber, Peleg, you can see that all of a sudden the people that were living post-flood, their lifespans drastically dropped. But see, Noah still, his body was extremely strong, and his genetic material about him was more robust than the people after the flood. And so that's the reason why he lived so long, and Shem lived so long. If evolution were true, we would expect all language families, linguists recognize 20 main ones to be related. However, linguist Dr. Paul Lawrence states languages within a language family have many common features. Surprisingly, few of these features are shared with languages from another language family, suggesting that the proto-languages and progenitors of modern isolates arose at the original confusion of languages. That's interesting. Groups speaking the same family language moved away. Those family languages evolved into about 6,000 languages today, though still keeping distinctions between the family language groups. And when you talk about different races and stuff like that, there's only one race, guys. It's the human race. Believe it or not, these girls right here they have a part Jamaican mother and a white father. And believe it or not, these girls here are twins. They are twins. Their names are Lucy and Maria Aylmer. Aylmer. So I know that Aylmer, and it's absolutely just incredible. If anybody was to see these girls walking and down the street, they would just think that they come from a quote unquote different race and they were just good friends. In reality, they are actually twins. They are sisters. And so, but they came from the same mother and the same father. And so there are not different races. There are only one race. There's just different skin colors. And so different shades. And so the absorbing pigment melanin produces the hair, skin, and eye color of every human. And recently, researchers from the University of Oklahoma and Stanford University identified 169 genes involving in melanin production, 135 of which were not previously associated with pigmentation. The study not only proves that human skin color is more complicated and complex than scientists previously thought, but it also confirms that we are all one race, the human race. There are no truly white or truly black people. We are all varying shades of brown. This study confirms the Bible's account of history as people groups spread throughout the world from the Tower of Babel. The genetic diversity packed into our DNA produced the spectrum of skin shades that we see in the world today. This genetic diversity originated with the first people, Adam and Eve, designed by our Creator from the beginning. And I said a hearty amen of that. Now, I'll tell you what, I'm going to introduce you to this guy here. We're kind of rounding this up to an end. Dr. John Sanford, he wrote a very interesting book. Cornell University professor for more than 25 years. Now, this is some old information, so I'm not sure where he is now. He worked in plant genetic engineering, published 70 scientific publications, invented the ballistic gene gun process, started 2 successful biotech businesses deriving from his research, Biolistics Incorporated and Sanford Scientific Incorporated, started a small nonprofit organization, Feed My Sheep Foundation. Now, he wrote a book called Genetic Entropy and the Mystery of the Genome, and I did read that book. It is a very, very fascinating book, and it's a very scary book, I will say that. And this is what he says. The consensus among human geneticists is that at present, the human race is degenerating genetically due to rapid mutation and accumulation and relaxed natural selection pressure. These geneticists realize that there is presently a net accumulation of mutations in the population, which is occurring at a much higher rate than previously thought possible. Geneticists widely agree that essentially all of these mutations are either neutral or deleterious. Now, that deleterious means that it's not beneficial. If any are beneficial, they are considered so rare as to be entirely excluded from consideration. So there's just not much. And so you got this geologic time scale of that uniformitarianist use / evolutionist used. And now, if you got to think, guys, if evolution of humans, which supposedly happened by their thinking 1.8 to 5.6 million years ago, then we should be extinct. We should be extinct because of all the mutation buildup. Now, real quickly, going back to the Wrangel mammoths, when it talks about gene mutations, it says, as I looked at the sequence data, says Rogers, and this is Rebecca Rogers from the University of California, Berkeley, it became clear that the Wrangel mammoth had an excess of what looked like bad mutations. Now, going on, she says, what happened on Wrangel wasn't a matter of inbreeding, Rogers says. The genetic signal is different. What happened was that the population was simply small, she says. And under these circumstances, any mammoth was better than no mammoth at all. Then they're talking about them reproducing. So natural selection did not operate in the usual way. This allowed unhelpful mutations to rack up because their population was trapped there on that island. Following a previously unidentified phenomenon called nearly neutral genome evolution, bad mutations that would normally be weeded out weren't removed from the population because reduced competition, says Rogers. Basically, they were on that island, and so any bad mutations that that did come about, they weren't filtered out because of a larger if you had a larger population. And so those bad mutations just kept getting passed down, and they bundled up, and then that's what she's saying happened. At any rate, if you want to check out Dr. Sanford's book, Genetic Entropy and the Mystery of the Genome, get ready for a very eye-opening read, because this is not an encouraging book at all. And I will say this, if you ain't saved, this right here will make you think, because we are not getting better and better as a population. Eventually, if the Lord did not come, we would become extinct. We would become extinct. It's just as simple as that. The humankind is degenerating. We are degenerating, not only morally, but we also are degenerating physically. Physically and genetically, we are degenerating. We are getting worse and worse and worse. Each generation is worse off than the previously, especially physically, genetically. And I will say on top of that, also morally, I'll tell you that right now, we are getting worse off morally. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And so, but at any rate, guys, I think one more video and we'll be done with one more video and we'll be done with the mammoths. And so, but you guys take care. I love you. I hope the Lord blesses you real good. Bye-bye.